thanks to Hasegawa-san for the introduction. I'm really thankful for this wonderful opportunity to speak at International House of Japan to share our architectural practice from China. So in past 10 years, we have been mostly working in the rural China. We have been collaborating with the village communities, but most importantly is that we have been learning from the villagers and the community. That actually architecture is the organic part of Wanwu All Things. So Wanwu is the concept brought up by Zhuangzi, an ancient Chinese philosopher from 2,500 years ago. Heaven and earth are born with me and all things are one with me. So we are the inseparable part of the nature, part of the Wanwu as the integrated system. And especially with the world, working in a time of uncertainties and changes, all things change. So this is really a fundamental concept of Wanwu, that we are working in a constantly changing, transforming, but also interconnected society and world. So this concept of all things has also inspired the modern social movement, especially the green movement since the 70s, with the green ecological, the deep ecology and eco-literacy that we, as a modern society, we realize and recognize the interdependence of all living beings and the urgent need to live sustainably. All things really bring up the a systematic thinking and holistic approach, which is also the reflection into architecture, how architecture can be engaged into our society to bring a social impact as a holistic approach. So let me first start by our Songyang story, which is 8 years collaboration. We have been working together with the local communities and local administrations in a county named Songyang, which is a typical agricultural county in China. It's located in the southwest mountainous region in Zhejiang province. And during the 8 years collaboration, we have been formulating a methodology that we called architectural acupuncture. That means with over 2,000 ancient natural villages around this county region, that every villages, this is actually one of the village in the mountain area, just like any other rural region in China, in the country, most of the villages are losing population, especially the younger population, who went to cities for better employment because of the urbanization process in past decades. And most of the villages are left with only elders and decreasing with a decreasing population. So at that moment, when we started over 10 years ago, when we visited these villages, there was really a disparity between the county urban center and also the rural villages. So the acupuncture strategy means that with a small intervention approach and a small-scale public program will be introduced to each village, really based on its context and heritage, and to serve the villager and the community, and to restore the village identity. At the same time, also working together with the rural cultural, educational tourism to improve the revenue, the income for the villagers, for the community. So this has been the mapping system that we're working in the county region, working with different villages located in the mountain area or on the flatland. So here are some of the examples. For example, this is a Hakka indenture museum that is introduced to a Hakka village called Shicang village. in the mountain area. So this is a project starting from the cultural aspect to build a new indenture museum by using local masonry construction technique. That indenture literally means the contracts or deals, any business patterns happening in the village in the past over 200 years that have been documented on paper. So that basically becoming the legal foundation of a Hakka society. So in that sense, this indenture museum is to restore such a social, cultural identity of Shicang village. And actually this village has the biggest indenture collection in the entire nation. So this also becomes the feature for the village to restore its identity. But at the same time, the project also became the opportunity to restore this long-lost masonry building techniques in the region. So the construction was able to identify 3 skilled workers in the region, elder skilled workers, but at the same time they were able to train the young workers. So the space, this indenture museum space, is to contemplate the history and legacy of Hakka indenture, but also open to the villagers and visitors as a sharing, commoning space. And it also become a platform to showcase the Hakka culture and heritage. Another case is starting from the point of view of infrastructure, that an abandoned Shimen bridge was about to be demolished. And the design intervention actually made a proposal to preserve this bridge by adding a new timber wooden canopy as to transform this bridge into a walkway, a pedestrian bridge. So this is also a representation of this traditional lounge bridge founding in this location, in this regional area, that often the bridge is not only for walking across the river, but more importantly as a meeting space for the village for important gathering events. So instantly this bridge as a pedestrian walkway can also be used as a community spaces for different activities. And it's also the best viewing terrace for the adjacent 1,000-year-old ancient water dam facility. This bridge also became the symbol of reunion for the 2 villages across the river. Over 200 years ago, these 2 villages used to be one village and was eventually separated into 2 by the flood. We've also been working with elements of nature. In Hengkeng village, when we were asked by the head of village to make a structure using their bamboo resource, that is, you see all these bamboo forests around the village and in the entire mountain area. And this actually inspired us for a life structure to work with living bamboo, that instead of constructing, you can weave these bamboo, the live bamboo, into a space, into a structure. That's also reflecting the traditional literati spirit of of the balance between human and nature. And at the same time, this bamboo structure can be a theater in the nature in the forest, but also it's metabolist structure, architecture. I want to specifically introduce agricultural production, because agriculture is really the intangible cultural heritage that we can work with as the soul, the spirit of architecture. Because in the rural area, when people settle down to a land hundreds of years ago, the first generation of ancestors arrived to a land to settle down, to build up their village, is first of all to look for water resource and also the land that is open, that is available for agricultural production in order to make a living. And then the buildings for their houses or ancestors' house are built up along the topography, and eventually, in generation by generation, they build up. The scale of the village expands, and basically, the village of such an ancient village community in China is often a related large clan. That means that all the families are somehow related relatives in that sense. So agriculture has been actually the very important part of our subjects to look for design intervention into villages. Then first case is the brown sugar factory built in Xing village, which is a flatland village that has always been known for its best brown sugar production in the region. So the brown sugar factory has become the starting point to restore the village identity, but at the same time to upgrade the production conditions. So you see from this process, these were the traditional brown sugar cooking back by the family households. Basically, it's happening. It's taking place in the family kitchens. So you see that this is really a striking performance. The production is during the winter season, starting from November until maybe just right before the Chinese New Year. So entire winter season during the 24 hours in a day, 3 shifts. That is very active and dynamic production scene happening in the village. Of course, there are also fire risks and hygiene issues, and also interruption to the village daily life. So in this sense, a new factory is programmed away from the living parts of the village, but also connecting to the sugarcane fields, and to integrate not only the production space, but also the community programs and other functions. So the main production space, in this sense, it's one large production space, divided by the different family workshops based on their working stations and the system of how they work. So you see the structure, the order and the rhythm of the space, and also working stations, chimneys, all are placed in order. And in this way, the building is conceived as a central stage to accommodate the production as the live performance. And these cooking masters are dressing in bright colors as the actors playing on the stage with their body movement. So and also together with the temperature, with the heat, it's quite a performance running 24 hours in a day during the production season, of course, with the 3 different shifts. And you can see that even the lighting is also designed as a stage lighting to illustrate this production scene as a live performance. So in this sense, the factory is not just only for production, but also considered as a live museum to showcase this cultural, intangible cultural heritage of brown sugar making as a cultural platform, as a cultural museum. And the space, again, accommodating other community program activities, functions, also open up to visitors. And the whole space is designed as open, transparent space. So the stage is always seen from different sides, different perspectives. And at the same time, the community space is an open space partially covered, but completely actually open to the nature, to the landscape. And on the other side is looking into the production area. So these spaces are not only used for factory only, but this production, because of the agricultural rhythm, it's only happening in the winter season. And during the non-production season, the space can also be used for village cultural events, or there's this puppet show theater group in a village by villagers. So at the same time, this production factory can also be functioning as a community center. And with this Huimin Tea workshop, we wanted to explore further on cultural message, especially with tea making. It's always related with Taoism, with Zen spirit. And this is a tea factory located in the tea plantation in Zimu Mountain. And the community here are from Shi minority people who has been living in this mountain and producing tea from Tang Dynasty. So the building volume is rather a simple box sitting on a part of the flatland on the terrace, and with one side as production space and the other side as and tea tasting, of course, for tea ceremony, tea tasting as a leisure program. And at the center is the visitors' lounge that you can walk in between to be able to visit, to view, to observe the production space. So that's basically the volume sitting on top on our site as really as continuation of the tea terrace, tea plantation. And on one side, this is the tea tasting, tea ceremony space looking out to the landscape. And the other side is the space, when it's facing to the west, is the space hidden behind this perforated wall, which is as a sunscreen for the production area. And again, this is traditional way of making tea in the local region since the Tang Dynasty. And because of the local village culture, this is a Shi minority people who has a speaking language but doesn't have the written language, written text. So instead they use the pictograph. So here we wanted also to transform the pictograph of Shi minority people into the symbols that we use as the perforated wall blocks. Here you can see the precast of the blocks indicating the different activities on different altitude. You know, from the top is the sun, and then from the bottom is the land, and then in between is the human activities, how Shi minority people work and live on this land in this mountain. And furthermore, we also want to express how cultural, metaphors are embedded in agriculture, in tea culture as well. So in traditional Chinese calendar, we have 24 solar terms instead of 12 months. So that's agricultural calendar. And summer solstice, of course, is the most celebrated day of the year, not only in China, but also around the world by different cultures, different religions. And then every day during the instead of 24 hours, in ancient time we used to have 12 hours, zodiac hours, really based on the activity patterns of different species, different animals. So you see that the traditional calendar, time, seasons is always associated with the nature. It's really based on the observation of nature and also acknowledgement of biodiversity. So on summer solstice day, it starts from the sunrise to sunset. At rabbit hour, dragon hour, snake hour, and horse hour is the noon, around noon, and then goat, monkey, and then sunset as rooster hour. So this becomes also the indication how we want to introduce the light tunnels, light tubes into the visitor lounge in the center. So these volumes extruding the building volume is actually the tubes that will bring in light into the central walkway. They're directed to different directions, and it's really based on the orientation, the angle of the zodiac hours on the summer solstice day from the sunrise to sunset. And it navigates the direct light, especially during the summer solstice time. The direct light can only enter the space through its correspondent light tubes. So as the central space, you can actually see we have a time elapse. That's starting from the sunrise, which is rabbit hour, and then it goes through the dragon hour, the snake hour, and the horse hour by noon. So the space becomes the sundial of the zodiac hour during the summer solstice time. And these light tubes are not only bring in the direct light to the space, into the central walkway space, but also extend it beyond the building volume to the roof, so to form a roofscape, which you can really see the building, from above the mountain, that with a thin layer of water to hide the building volume. So this whole tea culture, tea workshop transformed into a monument addressed to the summer solstice, to the sun, to the concept of time and light. That we wanted to use this project to bring the cultural message that even since the ancient time, we have already been really identifying ourselves as a organic part of the nature of our ecosystem, and we have already acknowledged the biodiversity. We are co-living, coexisting with other species in such an ecosystem. So when it comes to island, I want to introduce this major island project happening in my home city. It's a small island with 40,000 population living on this island. I think it has 11 villages in total, and also with the 3 elementary schools. And this major island is the home island of Mazu, the goddess of sea, who is worshipped by global Chinese society. So every year, there are over 3 million pilgrimage visitors come to the island, only to arrive at the northern part of the island for this pilgrimage events and programs. So when we were invited to design it was initially as a centralized museum project, as an iconic museum to attract visitors. We actually made a different proposal after visiting this island. So instead of a new museum that is located at the center as the iconic architecture, maybe would only work for the visitors most of the time, this could potentially become, break it apart and become small-scale buildings or structures integrating with the different village locations, and really based on how people live and produce and work on this island, based on the ocean marine ecology, how people can and really produce their aquaculture, ocean culture, and really on different parts of the island. So this small intervention spaces, again, similar to what we have done in Songyang, they would become the life museum and showcasing local, life and production. But at the same time, it's space not only working for visitors, but can also becoming community space. And more importantly, is to restore the local cultural production identity. This project in the mudland actually is happening located in the west part of the island on the mudland, where every day there's every 6 hours there's a high tide, and then every 6 hours there's also a low tide, similar to Mount Saint-Michel in France. So when the tide goes off, it really reveals this magnificent ocean farming happening on the mudland, where the fishermen have been cultivating in the past 1,000 years of history by using the masonry sticks into the mudland. So during the low tide, the oyster will gather on these masonry sticks, which really and also becomes the subject, the elements the fishermen will be collecting after the low tide, during the low tide. So this becomes an inspiration, not only for its scenic view, but also this indigenous knowledge and wisdom, how fishermen living by using this rhythm from the nature, and with such a minimal intervention, but at the same time can make a living, can make their income out of the nature. So this inspires us that to take the whole space, the whole production, the whole system as an existing architecture. So think about the space with the low tide. It really opens up the mudland for people to walk upon this land. And when the tide comes, it's inaccessible for human beings. So there's already a space or even an architecture formulated by the nature itself. So in this case, our design intervention is to consider this system as an existing architecture, and we only introduce a circular walkway along this to integrate with this system by using recycled elements from this production. So this actually reveals a whole knowledge, a whole site of this aquaculture on the mudland with very specific local indigenous knowledge, experience, wisdom. And our intervention is only to introduce a walkway for visitors, to take it not only a sightseeing trail, but really to take the whole system as a learning platform to understand this traditional way of living and producing by the fishermen, by the village community. So this is the high tide, and you could barely see the production. But when the tide goes off, it really reveals such a scale of production. And so the idea is, working with looking into the production of how people been inventing in different parts of either in both in mountain and also on the island, based on their local ecosystem, on their geographical conditions. It's always a low-tech, but at the same time sustainable knowledge and techniques, how people can survive on this land for hundreds of years, for thousands of years. So this is the knowledge, this is the educational resource for our society to understand such a sustainable way to coexist and also co-produce with nature itself. And we're on the east part of the island. There's also a local traditional way of producing kelp, and this floating bamboo structure with abalone cultivated under, in the ocean water, and also circular fish pond in the ocean to cultivate fish. But different kind of aquaculture has different interruption to the ocean water. Maybe the fish can produce pollution, but the kelp and abalone can help to clean up this kind of pollution. So on top of these different elements, we actually designed a system that can bring all these different cultivation together to reduce the pollution or the interruption to the ocean water, which kelp and oyster and abalone can help to absorb the inorganic carbon in the ocean water. But at the same time, we also wanted to take this as a learning or research platform to young students from the universities in the region. So by adding an additional canopy, this will become a platform for education, for learning, for research as well. But that also, this structure itself brings up another discussion of how we see the space, whether we see the space only built on top of the ground, or can the ground be the water itself, the water body itself, and the production, taking the resource or utilizing the space underneath the water can also be considered as architecture. So it's work in progress. And we also had a seaweed ecological center. Seaweed production is also very popular in Japan as well. And it's in my home city, along the coastal areas. It's also very popular production by local fishermen. But here I want to talk about, this is a seaweed production on the coastal line, on the mudland as well, which is really beautiful production structure. But I want to talk about this seaweed incubator that we were led by the local fishermen that we just met on the beach, and then they showed us to this seaweed incubator. It's a workshop for baby seaweed, so seaweed seeds to incubate here attached to these oyster shells and soaked in the ocean water for 8 to 10 months in a year before they were transported to the mudland for the growth. So this actually is another inspiration or the starting point for this seaweed ecological space, that we want to take this incubator as a central space. So again, this is a factory, a workshop for production. But then the cultural, social program can also be integrated with this production space. And also by, on one side, it's looking to the ocean, and the other side, it's connecting with the community. And in the center of the building is this incubator for baby seaweed growing silently underneath the ocean water. And the roof, of course, is monitored by, with light through different growing season. But then rest of the space can also become, workspace, workshop for the community, for villagers, or just gathering space for both villagers and for visitors. So again, this production building itself is based on top of the local existing indigenous knowledge, but integrate our social, cultural, educational program together with the production function. We also worked with any unusual resources. So today I want to talk about the Jingyun Quarry that we were invited by the Jingyun County. It's the neighbor county of Songyang. But unlike the Songyang has a very rich cultural, agricultural history and heritage, the Jingyun County, because of the geographical characters, then the only or the main production in the region is the quarry that started since 1,000 years ago over 1,000 years ago. But by year 2000, around the millennium time, when the most of the quarry family workshop operated quarries were closed down, left along with over 3,000 vacant, abandoned spaces in this region. So when we were invited by the local county to design new buildings for cultural, for leisure programs, after the research, we made a different proposal that instead of making new buildings, can we look into this original, local existing available resources as existing architecture, and the program of cultural or leisure functionals or educational functionalities can be introduced to these existing available structures according to the different quality or characteristics of these abandoned quarry spaces. So we worked with geotechnical engineers. First is to ensure the safety issue with a reinforcement into these quarry spaces. And in less than 6 months of construction, we have finished 3 quarry spaces with both safety reinforcement and space reuse. So the first quarry space is open quarry. Actually, the function is asked by the quarry workers for the demonstration site to show their quarrying techniques as a heritage. That's something they're really proud of. And alongside is the terrace or the seating area for visitors, also as the first resting area at the arrival point. And the second one, again, based on the acoustical quality, it's transformed into a performance space, either for young villagers or for local traditional opera performance. And again, the design is also minimal intervention, only to ensure the safety and the acoustical quality, and providing, a layer for our new social function and program. And then the third quarry is dedicated to local cultural, literati, and calligraphy heritage. So to convert this quarry into a book mountain. So it's taking the original topography or interior condition of this quarry space and become a book mountain as a public program, as a community program. And the design is really just to follow the original topography, interior topography, or the conditions. The quarry, by the time the quarry was closed down around year 2000, so it's actually a design of domestic scale, in contrast to the massive scale of this quarry space, which for this one is 38 meters tall in the maximum height. But also this new indication of domestic scale is to as a guidance for the new kind of social activities, to introduce a walkway or terrace or stopping platforms for visitors. So these quarry spaces are not just functional spaces, but also it used to be abandoned space by a closed down production or operation, and now can be transformed into a cultural community space. And also, as more importantly for us, it's that these quarry spaces are the monument for quarry workers, and also the quarry community and the quarry heritage in the region. So after this project, over the sudden we received probably around 20 quarry requests around China, around the entire country, because there was never a project that really transformed the quarry space itself into a public, a cultural space. You know, or the quarry space was never considered as existing architecture that has such potential. So again, we worked on these Huangyan quarries, which is very different condition because it's right next to the urban fabric in Huangyan district in Taizhou city. And this Huangyan quarry, the history traced back to Tang Dynasty over 1400 years ago. And if you look at the mountain, basically it's empty inside, and it's also the urban sprawl has already reached to the foot of these quarry spaces. So this really brings a new kind of a challenge, not only because of the complication, the complexity of quarry itself. If you look at the plan, you already see this very organic form of the plan. And it's only just one level of plan. But this is really the model we produced after 3D laser scanning of the space. And it could see the tallest space from ground above is 70 meters. And from ground below, it could reach to over 20 meters of the cave space underneath. So this is really the challenge of complexity or complication of such a engineering project. But at the same time, we also wanted to take this project as the opportunity to discuss whether the quarry space, you know, such a complexity can be reused for our urban functions and to accommodate with urban scale. So in that sense, well, you could see this from this construction space that even with interior space of over 20,000 square meters and with such a magnificent height, you know, below and above the ground, the space has a very small openings, which doesn't allow any our modern machinery to be shipped inside, to operate inside. So this actually, you know, it gives us also I think you can see that as constraints, but also the inspiration for us that, again, with a minimal design intervention, maybe we should reduce the amount of a design itself, only to provide design with necessity. So, and also to look into how to proceed the construction in a possible way. So on one hand, the design is minimal. And we're also looking into prefabbed CLT materials and also to accommodate the very unconventional microclimate within the quarry itself. So here from the entrance, the design started with the walkway to enter the space. And this walkway is actually connected or supported by two bridges as by the CLT timber structure to, first of all, as a cultural message of our traditional lounge bridge, which I showed earlier. And it's also the prefabbed CLT elements that can be produced in the factory and then shipped easily into our construction site. And again, the CLT material can accommodate to adapt to this microclimate within the quarry space. And when you enter the space, you will discover on one side a cafe space as the arriving landing area. And besides the circulation, we asked our lighting designer to illustrate the kind of a large figures on the cave. It's the mineral like copper, iron, mineral components within the stone itself that was really revealed by the quarry workers by extraction. So these are like large-scale figurative paintings that really become the artwork that's produced, or created by the nature and the quarry workers together. So they become the indication of space, how to proceed, and whenever there's a landing platform, we were able to accommodate different functions like a cafe or workshops or designer workshops or educational platforms. And some of the new platforms are actually, with the new floors, are supported again by this timber bridge structure, which extended to a architectural scale and also become the ceiling to shelter the space below. So for all the quarry spaces, the design intend to introduce a new layer of material and scale for human scale and for human activities. So this can be used as a theater space for operas, for theaters. And another resource or element with this quarry is the water. And this actually creates a water passage, with the cave underneath the ground can reach to over 20 meters. Of course, you can see this layer of safety net underneath the water. But then it also creates a passage, a different kind of experiment when visiting this quarry by boat. And the smaller tunnels can be used for art exhibitions. So there's currently a show going on within the space. And with the tunnels going to open quarry space, it's also transformed into courtyard spaces. So this quarry just opened up 1 month ago. We're still looking forward to see how it will accommodate to its urban life in the future. Thank you so much.
本当に私たちは資源にリーチできない弱者だということは非常にみんなここにいらっしゃる方大半身に染みてらっしゃる、私も染みてるんですが、でやっぱり今じゃあ例えば天天さん鴨川に行かれて実際ご覧になって、どういう棚田を見て印象を持たれましたか？
That was a really amazingly beautiful project and really inspiring. I kept talking of this Tanaka project after the trip and on the way, I think it's first of all, it's not easy. On one hand, it's amazing opportunity for the students because you set it up as an educational structure for the students. So that actually demands huge effort from the professors to be able to take all your resources to set up such an educational structure. But on the other hand, it's also reciprocal because the students' engagement in such a setting brings new potential for this location, for the village, for the community. So it is a very smart, very intellectual social structure that Tsukamoto-san has been developing in this region for 5 years already, right? But I want to say that it also, like we discussed on site, I think this is really a new concept of architecture for the students. How we see architecture is not just the number of buildings or the scale of buildings, but rather how the architecture, the building is integrating with the local life and production, and then how people take in the local available resources and natural bio-based resources and materials to not only to build the houses or the structures, the spaces, but really to build up a whole system of this production also with the agriculture, with the nature itself. So it's never, I think architecture, we probably limited we maybe reduced our concept of architecture after living in cities for years. Maybe the architecture concept was already existing in a rural concept with people living there really understanding the nature much more sensitively compared to people living in the cities, So the architecture was already, about such a broader scope. And that's why I hope to bring this concept of Wanwu, all things, as maybe, we can always expand, but it doesn't mean that architecture will go disappear in that sense. I think it's just bring architecture more powerful and understand, the necessity of buildings. So it's never going out of discussion of making of buildings, but rather seeing your project in the Tanaka project, how students or everybody was really working with the recyclable materials, like the trees cut off because of typhoon from the forest, or even the soil, the stone, and how to work with the rainwater, when it's, and not only to prevent the flood, but also to utilize the rain, the moisture. I think, and also the rice, the husk. Yes, exactly, as a insulation material. So all of this new innovative way of seeing building, but in a much more sustainable way. I think this is lacking in our contemporary, educations in the majority. So I think this really brings a new perspective, vision to architecture.
ありがとうございます。お二人に質問なんですけど、やっぱりこのレクチャーのタイトルが生きたシステムとしての建築というタイトルつけられてるんですね。だから建築の新しい概念を広げていくっていうことだと思うんですけど、そのシステムを理解するときに、じゃあどういう方法論とか、どういうリサーチとか、あるいは自分の感情をどのようにその対象をトランスレートしていくことで使っていくのか、多分皆さんそういうそのモチベーションとか方法論をすごい知りたいと思ってらっしゃると思うんですね。だからその例えば今漁師さんからそうやってなんかいろんな意味で「あんた何しに来たの?」みたいな言われながらこう入っていくっていう塚本さんのじゃあ米で一段かみたいなそういうのもすごく一つのリサーチのやり方だと思うんですけど、てんてんさんの場合は本当にそのああいうその黒糖を作ってらっしゃる方とか、その農業の本当に非常に限界集落みたいなのも行かれたとか、いろんな状況に行かれてると思うんですが、その時にどういうリサーチの方法とか、あるいはその住民の方とのコミュニケーションとか、あるいはそれをシステム、エコシステムとしてリサーチするには非常に多くのやっぱりリサーチが必要だと思うんですね。それを解析する方法論も必要だと思います。それをどのようにやってらっしゃるのかっていうのに大変興味があったんですけれども。例えば一つのプロジェクトで説明していただいてもいいかと思います。はい。どうぞ。じゃあちょっとてんてんさん。はい。
Thank you for asking, but I think it's just the same method that I asked the villagers.
そうですね。
Either the farmers or the fishermen that we met on the street. So I think it's really through this encountering, and then I ask directly. So that's what I meant. It's a collaboration. It's not only works belong to the architects, but rather a co-authorship, co-designing process. And I think it must be the same that we always, as architects, we were not educated, with the agricultural knowledge, to be honest. So we need to learn from the local people, not only the buildings, the making of the buildings, but in general, how they make a life happening here. So I think this is maybe the most direct way, maybe the most efficient way to ask the villagers, and they are always very willing to engage in the process. And then you will really understand how proud they are when they tell you about, what is the best thing in the village, or the best product, and they really show you the sense of a pride and honor. I think this is somehow very touching moment. It's always this kind of a moment to start with the project. Also the seaweed incubator in the fishing village as well. And the villagers are very proud of their production, and the production as a way they make a living, but also as a knowledge-based cultural heritage. And that's something they inherited or developed through generations, through their father generation, grandfather generation, and I think it also built up the collective memory. So it really gives a multi-dimensional understanding, not just only seeing maybe the local technique of how to make this production, but really respect and understand the emotion behind, the sentimental emotion, values behind this production.
今てんてんさん言っていただいたことに加えて私が言うと、そういう、リサーチみたいなものを、ある意味助ける認識の変更というのが必要じゃないかなというふうにも思ってて、それは漁師の人たちと会っていろんな復興支援をする中で気づいていったことでもあるんですけど、空間型の教育を、空間についてすごく教育を受けてきて、空間的に物事を捉えるっていうのはすごく訓練されてきたんですけども、この人たちが喋ってることは空間の話じゃないなと。それよりは事物の連関とか物事がどういうふうに関係してつながっていってるのかっていうことについてのネットワークの話だっていうふうに考えるようになって、でちょうどブルーノ・ラトゥールのアクターネットワークセオリーとかも読んでいたし、それから内山隆さんの事物連関の話とかも私はすごい好きだったのですごくピンときてですね、それでこれは空間型の想像力から事物連関型想像力へとシフトを促されてるんだなっていうふうに思ったんですね。で私はそれすごく逆にこれからの建築を考えていくのにすごい大事なことだなと思ったんで、もう全力で飛び込もうと思ってそこに入っていきました。それで事物連関型で見るということは今目の前にあること以外のものへもどんどんその背後に何があるのかとか、どこまでつながっていくんだろうかとかいうふうになっていくので、本当に今日てんてんさんのタイトルにもなっていた「ワンウー」っていう万物ですね、その話へとつながっていくんじゃないかなというふうに思うんですね。で空間って言ってる間はやっぱり地球環境の問題とか南北格差であるとか、いろんな問題が今我々の社会を取り巻いてるわけですけども、そこに直接建築で向き合うことがなかなかできないんじゃないかなと思ったんですよ。やっぱり事物連関型の想像力じゃなきゃ、それは1960年代には問題になっていなかったことなんですけれども、そういう問題に向き合えないまま60年代頃のハッピーなそれをハッピーと言っちゃいけないのかもしれないですけども、その頃にかなり鍛え上げられた空間という概念でいつまでもやってられないぞっていうのが私はすごく思っていることです。
今ちょうどアクターネットワークのことをお二人に聞こうと思っていたのでズバリ出していただいて、でアクターネットワーク論においては事物のつながり連鎖ということを非常に大事に考えるんですけど、そのつながる時のトランスレーションの問題がすごく大きい。だからさっき私はてんてんさんに、どうやって事物を自分で認識して調査し、それをどうやってトランスレーションしているのかっていうことをちょっともし例があったらちょっとご自分のトランスレーションの方法みたいなのをちょっと教えていただけたらと思います。であと事物連関アクターネットワークについてはどう思われますか？まさになさっていることはその通りだと思うんですけど。
I want to say that we have a term for this type of a project. We call it production scape. So architecture is the production scape based on local production, which is always, very unique, special, local, site-specific production. And so for us is that, this type of production, like I said earlier, it's intangible cultural heritage. It's also it's the knowledge based on local ecosystem, geographical conditions, and it also the culture, the cultural value. So we think there's already, and it's a network, not people living there, but really, the circular, or the circulation of the whole ecosystem for human being to live on this village, in this village. So our architecture is to identify this production, and then by adding a new layer of social, cultural, educational program. Well, not substantive program of scale, of course, but really adapt to the scale of production itself. So in that sense, we call it production scape. Basically, it's starting from a function of a factory, a workshop, or a production incubator, but then it's also becoming a live museum. And it's a social space, community space, cultural educational platform. So these are all having incredible amount of social values that we just, so in that sense, architecture is also the acupunctural intervention to really to bring up this potential hidden values.
今おっしゃったことを本当に素晴らしいと思っていて、エデュケーションということとミュージアムっていう言葉と、それからそこから学んでいくっていう要素を非常にレクチャーの中でもおっしゃったと思います。で、私は日本の建築についての考え方がそのスペースについてのそれが割と欠けてるのかなと思うんです。それをちょっと今。
いやいや、頑張ってる連中もいますよ。そのトランスレーションの話、すごいやっぱり面白い質問、いい質問だなと思って、で私はですね、里山での活動とかを通して気づいていったのが、普遍の工程があるっていうことですね。でこれはインタンジブルな、でももうアーキテクチャと言えるぐらいにもう順番があるんですよ。でこの順番は変えられない。田んぼ、米作りにも普遍の工程がありますし、それから今日見せていただいた豆腐作りにも、それからブラウンシュガー作りにも普遍の工程がある。でこの普遍の工程というのが実はネットワークの中にネットワークを通して人間がいられる場所を、あるいは人間がそのネットワークに入っていけるやり方を教えてくれる、なんていうんですか、触れないタイプの建築。彼女がよくもう建築があるじゃないかと、島のプロジェクトの時にも言ってましたけども、すでにあるエキジスティングアーキテクチャがここのシーファーミングの中にありますって言ってましたけども、それも私は本当にその通りだなと思っていて、その普遍の工程っていうのを今はだからここまで建築の価値が解体されてしまって、もう時間とお金通り作ればいいんだみたいになってしまっている社会の中で、もう一回建築を組み立て直すとすると、やっぱり事物連関に基づいてその普遍の工程みたいなものに見えない建築、インタンジブルな触れない建築というものを見て、そこにでも実は変わらない文化的価値があって、今自分が生きているということと昔の人たちがそれを思いついて洗練させて続けてきたことがつながるわけですよね。そういうものにやっぱり私も興味があってかけたいなというふうに思ってます。